My wife cheated with her boss, then he mysteriously died in a car crash. And now she's claiming half of our $1 $2 million house and $300 $0 in savings. How do I prove she's been lying about everything? Hello everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be nothing but a lying, cheating piece of work. Honestly, if you told me a year ago that my perfect marriage would unravel because of her affair with her boss, I'd have laughed in your face. But here I am, trying to make sense of everything, trying to figure out how I got played so badly. It all started subtly, little things at first. Lisa was always a little bitchy when she was stressed, but lately she'd get even more irritable over the smallest stuff. She'd snap at me over nothing, roll her eyes when I tried to talk about our weekend plans. And suddenly she was working late more often. I didn't think much of it initially. I figured work was busy, or maybe she just needed some extra time to get ahead. Besides, she was always so convincing about how much she loved me, how she'd never cheat, how she'd never do anything to hurt me. But then, things started to feel off. She'd get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts, and her phone was always password protected, more than usual. She'd hide it when I came into the room, and I'd catch her deleting messages or clearing her browsing history. I told myself I was overreacting, that maybe I was just paranoid. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. One night, I was doing some late-night work in the living room when I saw her phone light up with a message from someone named Mike. The message was recent, and from what I could see, it was flirtatious. Nothing explicit, but enough to make me feel sick. Words like "can't wait to see you tonight," and "you're the only one who makes me feel alive" made my stomach turn. I froze, staring at her phone, trying to process what I just read. How long had this been going on? Was I just blind to it? The next day, I decided to dig a little deeper. I started paying more attention to her schedule, her habits. I noticed she was sneaking out late at night, sometimes claiming she was working late when I knew she was at some hotel with Mike. I found receipts for dinner at a fancy restaurant, and I even saw her parked in a parking lot near a hotel when I drove by unexpectedly. That was the moment I knew I'd caught her red-handed. I confronted her that night. I told her I knew she'd been lying, that I'd seen the messages, the receipts, the hotel parking lot. Her face, it was like she didn't even try to deny it. Instead, she threw a fit, calling me paranoid, insecure, and accused me of spying on her. She said she was only having sex with Mike because I wasn't satisfying her anymore, that I was boring, that she needed excitement. She told me she loved me, but that she needed something more, whatever that meant. I was stunned. I felt like I'd been hit by truck. All those years of marriage, the plans we made, the house we built together, gone in a second. And her. She just sat there bitching and blaming me for her cheating as if she was the victim. She told me I was too controlling, that I didn't understand her needs, that she deserved to be happy. I couldn't believe how easily she lied, how she spun everything to make herself look innocent. And then, things got even crazier. The day after her big confession, I found out that Mike had died in a car crash. No warning, no accident, just a sudden, tragic accident that made my stomach sink even further. The police said it was just bad luck, drunk driving, they claimed. But I knew better. I knew Lisa's affair had something to do with it. She was acting strange, nervous, avoiding my eyes. I started to suspect she might have been involved somehow, maybe even orchestrated the whole thing. It was a lot to process. My wife, the woman I loved and trusted, was cheating on me with her boss, and now her lover was dead in a suspicious car crash. I felt betrayed, furious, and helpless all at once. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I had to get to the bottom of it. I couldn't let her get away with this. Not after everything. After Mike's death, everything started to spiral even further out of control. Lisa became even more defensive, more bitchy, and suddenly, her attitude shifted to this cold, calculating edge that I'd never seen before. She insisted she was innocent, said she was just a victim of circumstance, that she didn't know Mike was going to die, that she had nothing to do with his reckless driving. But I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. She threw herself into her stories, spinning lies faster than I could keep up. She claimed she was just comforting Mike after a rough week at work, that they'd been meeting for drinks but nothing else. I knew better. The way she looked at her phone, the way she'd suddenly get defensive when I asked about her whereabouts, she was hiding something, and I was starting to see the cracks in her story. I decided to do some digging myself. I couldn't rely on her version of events anymore. I started going through her emails, her social media, her texts. I found emails from Mike, flirty, suggestive, full of promises. And then I found something that made my blood run cold. A series of bank transfers from Lisa's account to an account that was not hers, not ours. Someone had paid her for services, I guess. It was enough to prove that her affair went way beyond just some flirtation. She was deep in it, and she was lying about everything. But what hit me hardest was the realization that Lisa wasn't just cheating on me, she was planning something. I found receipts for a lawyer's consultation, for a property appraisal, and for a divorce consultation. That's when I knew she was gearing up for a fight, trying to take half of our house, the savings, everything we'd worked for. She was claiming she deserved it, that she was entitled to her fair share. She even had the nerve to say I was a bad husband, that I neglected her, that I was controlling, all to justify her betrayal. That's when my mind snapped. I couldn't let her get away with this. I started to think about how to prove she'd been lying about everything. About her affair, about her innocence, about her motives. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't just sit back and let her walk away with half of the house, especially after what she'd done. I needed to turn the tables, to expose her for the manipulative, lying bitch she really was. I remembered some things I'd overheard at work, some whispers from her friends, and I decided to use that information to my advantage. I set up hidden cameras around the house, especially in the bedroom and her office. I wanted concrete proof of her lies, and I wasn't going to stop until I had it. I also contacted a private investigator to dig into her financials, to see if she'd been secretly funneling money somewhere else, maybe to cover her tracks or prepare for the divorce. Meanwhile, Lisa kept up her act, pretending to be the innocent wife, the victim of my controlling ways. She'd scream at me, call me paranoid, accuse me of trying to ruin her life. But I knew better. I had seen enough to know she was lying about everything, and I was determined to catch her red-handed. It was all of emotions, anger, betrayal, heartbreak, and I wasn't sure how much more I could take. Every day I felt like I was walking on thin ice, waiting for her next move, trying to keep my cool. But I knew that if I didn't act now, I'd lose everything. Our house, our savings, maybe even my sanity. I was ready to fight back, to expose her lies, and to take back what was mine. I just didn't know how deep her deception went, or how far she was willing to go to keep her secrets hidden. The more I dug into her stuff, the more I realized just how deep her lies went. I found emails from Lisa to a lawyer, setting up contingency plans if things went south. There were drafts of divorce papers, detailed lists of our assets, and even notes about how to hide certain accounts from me. It was clear she was preparing for a fight, probably trying to secure her share of everything before I could get a handle on her lies. I also found out that she'd been secretly transferring money to an offshore account. Nothing huge, just enough to make it hard for me to track. She'd been funneling cash out of our joint savings, probably to cover her own expenses or to set herself up somewhere else. The house, the savings, she was claiming half of everything, but I knew she'd been planning this for a while. I started to feel like I was losing my mind. My wife, the woman I married, was a master manipulator. She lied about her feelings, her fidelity, her intentions. The betrayal cut so deep it was like someone had punched me in the gut every time I thought about it. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd been played, used, betrayed, and left to pick up the pieces. One night I caught her in a lie I couldn't ignore. She told me she was going to be at a spa with her friends, but her phone records showed she was actually at a hotel with a guy named Jake, another guy she'd been texting obsessively. I felt sick. I couldn't believe I missed all these signs, that I'd trusted her all these years. And now all I could think about was how she had been lying right to my face, planning her escape while I was clueless. Then came a sudden, shocking event, her claiming she was pregnant. That was the last straw. She said she wanted to keep the baby, that it was proof that she still loved me, that she was willing to work things out. But I saw right through her. She was just trying to manipulate me again, to get sympathy, to buy herself more time. I knew it was a lie. There was no way she was pregnant. I'd had my suspicions for weeks now. I hadn't seen her with any signs, no morning sickness, nothing. It was just her latest ploy to keep me hanging on, to buy herself more time, to hide her tracks. At this point, I was furious. I felt like I'd been sucker punched so many times I couldn't even breathe right. How could she lie so effortlessly, so convincingly? How could she pretend to be innocent when she was clearly planning to take everything from me? I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with everything I'd uncovered. I wanted her to admit it all, to see the truth in her eyes. So I set up a meeting at our house, told her I wanted to talk, and laid out all my evidence. The bank transfers, the emails, the fake pregnancy, the hotel receipts. I told her I knew she'd been lying about her affair with Mike, that I knew she'd been planning to leave me and take everything. Her reaction? She laughed in my face, called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, just like she always did when she got caught. She told me I was just jealous, insecure, and that I had no right to accuse her of cheating. That was the moment I decided I'd had enough. I couldn't live like this anymore, with her lying and manipulating me. I knew I had to find a way to prove her lies in court, to expose her for the manipulative bitch she was. I also knew I needed to protect myself financially, because she was already trying to claim half of our house and savings, things we'd worked for, everything I'd built. I started to look into hiring a lawyer who specialized in divorce and asset protection. I needed someone who could help me get proof of her financial misconduct, who could help me fight her claim for half the house. I also contacted the private investigator again to dig into her offshore accounts. I wanted hard evidence, proof that she'd been lying about everything, that she'd been planning her escape while pretending to be the perfect wife. The emotional toll was overwhelming. I felt betrayed, angry, and numb all at once. Every night I'd lie awake thinking about how I got here, how I trusted her all these years, and how she'd turned out to be the biggest liar I'd ever known. I was starting to see her true face, bitchy, manipulative, and selfish. But I also knew I wasn't going down without a fight. I had to expose her lies, protect what was mine, and somehow find a way to move on from this nightmare. The next few weeks were a blur of planning and gathering evidence. I spent every spare moment reviewing her financial statements, cross-referencing bank transfers, and coordinating with the private investigator. Every new piece of information confirmed what I already suspected. Lisa had been secretly siphoning money out of our joint accounts, planning her escape, and lying to my face the entire time. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was furious. How could she do this? How could someone I loved turn into such a cold, calculating liar? I had built that house with my own blood, sweat, and tears. I had worked hard for every dollar in those savings, and she somehow was trying to take it all away from me, claiming she deserved half because she was entitled. That thought made my stomach churn. I also learned from the private investigator that Lisa had been funneling money offshore for months. She'd set up a separate account under a fake name, and there were transfers going out every week. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. She'd been planning to leave with a big chunk of what we'd accumulated, maybe even start over somewhere else. The realization that she'd been lying so blatantly and secretly planning her future without me made me feel sick. The emotional toll hit me hard. I was trying to keep it together, but every day I felt like I was walking a tightrope. I'd find myself staring at the house, thinking about how she'd betrayed me, how she'd lied about everything. I kept asking myself, how did I miss all the signs? Was I just that blind? Or was she that good at hiding her true self? It was like I was living in some nightmare I couldn't wake up from. One night I decided to confront her again. I invited her over for what I called a serious talk. When she arrived, she was bitchy as usual, rolling her eyes and snapping at me. I pulled out all the evidence I'd collected, screenshots of her bank transfers, emails, her fake pregnancy test, the hotel receipts. I laid everything out on the table and looked her straight in the eyes. "You've been lying to me from the start," I said. "I know about the offshore account. I know about the transfer of money, the fake pregnancy, the hotel with Jake. How long have you been planning this?" She looked stunned for a moment, then her face twisted into a sneer. "You're crazy," she spat. "You've always been paranoid. I don't know what you're talking about. You're just jealous because I'm more successful than you. Maybe if you weren't so insecure, you'd see that I'm the one who's been right all along." I couldn't believe her audacity. Her tone was so dismissive, so full of contempt. I felt my blood boil. I told her she was a liar and a manipulator, that I had all the proof I needed to take her to court and fight for my rights. I told her I was done being played like a fool. Her reaction: she started crying, fake tears streaming down her face, whining about how she loved me, how she wanted to make things right, how she'd never cheat if I just gave her a chance. But I knew her too well now. That was just her way of trying to manipulate me again, to make me feel guilty so I'd back down. The next day, I made the decision. I was going to file for divorce. I couldn't live under the same roof anymore, knowing she'd lied and cheated so blatantly. I also contacted a lawyer to start the process of protecting my assets. I wanted to make sure she couldn't take a dime of what I'd earned. I needed to get her out of my life once and for all. At the same time, I started to plan how I'd prove her lies in court. I had all the evidence now: money transfers, emails, receipts, the private investigators' reports. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail, claiming she deserved half of everything, but I was ready. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my house, my savings, my future. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made, cutting her out, ending the marriage, exposing her lies. But I knew I had no other choice. She'd betrayed me beyond repair, and I couldn't keep living in this nightmare. I just hoped that somehow I'd come out of this stronger and rebuild what I'd lost. The day I filed for divorce was one of the most surreal moments of my life. Sitting in that lawyer's office, going through the paperwork, I felt like I was finally taking control of the chaos Lisa had thrown into my world. All the evidence I'd collected was ready to be used: proof of her affair, her lies about the pregnancy, the offshore accounts, the secret transfers. I knew she'd fight me, fight hard, but I was determined to come out on top. Lisa's reaction was predictable. She went ballistic the moment I told her I was filing. She screamed, called me every name in the book, accused me of ruining her life, and then, just like that, started throwing tantrums. She said I was trying to steal her happiness, that I was controlling her, and that everything I'd done was just proof that I was insecure and paranoid. Honestly, her bitchy attitude only fueled my resolve. I had all the proof I needed, and I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this one. The court date was set for a few weeks later. Meanwhile, I pushed ahead with my plan to protect what was mine. I hired a forensic accountant to dig even deeper into her financials, making sure there were no hidden accounts or assets she was trying to hide. I also made sure to document every interaction, every lie, every attempt she made to manipulate me. I knew she'd try to spin the story, but I had everything on my side now. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt like I was living in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every night I'd lie awake, replaying everything: the betrayal, the lies, the way she'd looked at me with contempt. I kept asking myself how I'd missed all the signs, how I'd been so blind. But then I'd remind myself that I had done everything I could to trust her, to believe she'd be faithful. It was her choice to betray that trust, not mine. When the court date finally arrived, I felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. I sat there, listening as our lawyers laid out the evidence. I saw Lisa's face turn pale when they presented the bank transfer records and her emails. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was entitled to half the house because she contributed to its value, but I had proof that she'd been planning her departure long before any of this. I presented the evidence that proved she'd lied about her affair, about the pregnancy, about her financial dealings. It was like watching her fall apart on the stand. In the end, the judge awarded me full custody of the house and the savings. Her claim for half was mainly because I had the documented proof of her lies and financial misconduct. The judge also ordered her to pay back the money she'd secretly transferred offshore, along with fines for her deception. It felt good, finally, some justice after months of betrayal and manipulation. But even as I walked out of that courtroom victorious, I knew the scars would linger. Lisa was gone now, officially. Divorced, officially exposed. I was left to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I realized that trusting blindly had cost me everything I worked for, but I also learned that sometimes you have to fight tooth and nail to protect what's yours. I learned that the truth always comes out in the end, even if it takes months of heartbreak and betrayal to get there. Now I'm rebuilding. I've started therapy, trying to work through the anger and hurt. I've cut all ties with Lisa, and I'm focusing on my future, one where I don't have to look over my shoulder or wonder if the person I loved was just pretending all along. I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, don't let them get away with lying, don't be afraid to fight for your rights, and never forget that your worth isn't defined by someone else's betrayal. Sometimes, you have to lose everything to find what truly matters, yourself and your peace. Looking back now, I realize that the whole experience changed me in ways I never expected. I thought I knew Lisa, thought I knew the woman I married. Turns out, she was just a master at hiding her true colors. The betrayal cut so deep that I questioned everything about myself, about trust, about love. But I also learned a vital lesson. Never ignore the signs and always protect what's yours. The aftermath has been a long, painful journey of healing, but it's also been a lesson in resilience. I've come to understand that people can surprise you in ways that are devastating, but also in ways that can make you stronger. I've had to rebuild my confidence, my sense of security, and my faith in myself. The house, the savings, the years I poured into that marriage, they're all I have left now, and I intend to cherish them even more because I fought so hard to keep them. One thing I've realized is how much lying and deception can destroy lives. Lisa's lies weren't just about cheating, they were about everything. She lied about her feelings, her loyalty, her future plans. And in the end, her lies cost her everything she wanted. I hope anyone reading this understands that honesty, even when it's hard, is always better than deception. Because, in the long run, the truth will out, no matter how deep you bury it or how well you hide your lies. I've also learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone back, at least not entirely. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, and your peace of mind. I had to do what I did to protect myself, to make sure she couldn't take what was rightfully mine. And I did it without crossing any lines that would make me feel ashamed later. My goal was always justice, not vengeance. Now I'm moving forward. I have no illusions about the future, but I know it will be better. I'll never forget what happened, but I refuse to let it define me. I've learned to trust my instincts again, to listen to that little voice that says something's wrong before it's too late. And I've learned that sometimes you have to lose everything to truly understand what's worth fighting for. To anyone out there going through a similar nightmare, hold on, keep your head up, fight for what's yours, and never forget that you're stronger than any betrayal. No matter how much it hurts, you can survive it. You can rebuild. And someday, you'll look back and see that even the darkest storms have a way of clearing the sky.